Here we'll have another extremely racist video by Uncle Ruckus, Jesse Lee Peterson, who also will showcase his extreme ignorance about everything in his warped reality. It's dude, it's really fucked up listening to this dude because no matter what it is, everything he says is either racist, misogynistic, ignorant, or just fucked up in some way.
Hey Jesse, how are you?
All is well, sir. How you?
I'm doing pretty well, man.
Good.
Um, so what I wanted to talk about, I think basically your intro actually kind of supports my point. So basically, you kind of went on about how blacks really did better during this Jim Crow period, right? When during this period of segregation,
Absolutely.
I think that's so. I think that's demonstrably true. But I think the reason for that is that they were forced to have black leaders, right? The best and the brightest stay in those communities, right? And make
No,
sure that there's
no,
order.
you're
Make sure
wrong.
what?
Before the
Okay, why am I
civil
wrong?
before the civil rights movement, there was no such thing as black leaders. Black
Oh, oh,
men,
so
black men just lived. They were fathers and grandfathers. They were married. They worked hard. They didn't have anyone, no other human beings telling them what to do, when to do it, and how to do it.
Yes, the people would have pillars of their community, people they would have seen as leaders. Um, Maybe not like um, you know, civil rights activists in the way that Jesse Lee Peterson wants to think of, like Martin Luther King and Al Sharpton, but yeah, there would be pillars of the community leaders. Um, and before the civil rights movement, you did have black people being told what to do. You had slavery, where people were enslaved. Uh, and then you had the Jim Crow laws, which told people uh, what to do and how to act and where they could be. This just shows the ignorance of Jesse Lee Peterson. Even though he lived on a plantation and his raised by his grandparents, whose uh, parents, his great grandparents, were slaves.
right, right. I don't mean like Al Sharpton or these other idiots. What I'm saying is that like the people who would go on to be lawyers and doctors and the smartest in those communities, right? They stayed there. But right now, with desegregation, the smartest and best blacks, they leave, which I understand. I wouldn't want to live in the ghetto, but then those black areas, they just get worse and worse and worse. So,
Yeah.
Okay, the areas aren't getting worse and worse and worse because uh, just because black people are leaving, uh, these areas are getting inherently worse because of income inequality and forced poverty as people are f- you know impoverished throughout their generations. Your great grandparents are slaves and your grandparents work on a plantation. uh, Both of those generations of people are going to be poor. Your parents are going to be poor, which in turn you're likely going to be poor. In some cases, Jesse ended up becoming wealthier, though being a racist person. There's a lot of people that are going to still be poor, um, especially if they're, uh, you know, grandparents, their parents, and they were raised in a poor household. During slavery times and Jim Crow times, black people have been denied the ability to own or gain ownership of land, which has prevented um, the uh, gain of wealth, because with the use of land you can basically gain unlimited wealth.
I think it makes sense, right? And this isn't due to racism. I love black people. I'll say, but I think it makes sense for whites and blacks should just go their separate ways. I think it'd be best for both parties. It seems like we just can't get along for the most part, and I think it would make sense for maybe the United States to carve out a region that is explicitly or exclusive to blacks, so they can govern their own, so they can take care of their own. And I think both races would be happier and better off. And I think it's more in keeping with nature.
Okay, so this guy wants to split the United States in half, have white America, black America, because uh, black people and white people can't get along. Well, I mean, if you look at the history of America, you could probably realize why that's the case, and it's because of white racism, the racism of white people towards black people, you know, slavery, Jim Crow. You have the war on drugs, the various propaganda uh, towards black people by racist white people in power. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of um, strife between the two groups, especially uh, by the racist white people in power. This is why anti-racist activism is needed. We could remove these people from their positions of power, strip them of their ill-gotten wealth, and distribute that amongst the people who actually need it, and prop up everybody that have been affected by these people.
And again, I think your evidence supports where that's going.
But
I think everything you said about the Jim Crow period supports a movement like that.
no, but being smart doesn't make you moral. Black people today, they are getting those degrees and doing those things, but they have no moral values. They have hatred in their hearts. They have no respect for themselves or other. They don't believe in God. And so it's not about getting a law degree or a doctorate degree. It's about character. It wasn't.
Oh, okay, so black people just don't have moral, they just don't have morals or character. They're just straight up evil. So does this mean Jesse Lee Peterson is an evil person because he's black? He has no morals, no characters? Is this his way of telling his audience that he's actually an evil person? Um, and since he knows he's a bad person, he wants to project that onto all black people. I think so.
If when blacks went to school, they became a lawyer, a doctor. That was just for them. It wasn't for black people.
Okay, during Jim Crow era, uh, yeah, a lot of black people weren't allowed to go to white areas. A black doctor wouldn't be able to treat white kids. So yeah, if a black person became a doctor, they would pretty much be a doctor for black people. Just another bit of Jesse Lee Peterson's own ignorance.
That individual decided that individual wanted to be a lawyer. However, they made that decision.
Yeah,
And what they need to do today is they need to stop catering to the blacks. They need to point out the fact that they are immoral, that they are angry, and that the men are weak, and stop giving them free stuff and make them earn their way.
yeah, but
Hold on a minute. Hold on.
I find it funny that he's telling black people that they need to earn their way, while even though he worked on a plantation that had slaves and those white people didn't earn their way or anything, they used forced labor to make a profit. Which, Jesse, worked on as a kid, which he uses some of his experience as to why black people nowadays are bad and plantation black people were good.
Alex, don't
Sure,
hang up. Hold on.
sure.
So, Alice, I want to make it really, really clear that black people are not suffering because um, the doctors are leaving the communities or Snoop Dogg and all those people when they make money and they leave the community. They're suffering because they literally have no character. They are evil.
Well,
They
I
are
think that's
they
part of it.
because if they have
Did you hear what his caller said? I think that's part of it. He's agreeing with Jesse that he thinks that part of the reason why black people are suffering is because black people are just evil.
character, the the father and the mother who get married and raise their children, I don't care who leave the community. Your children are going to be decent children. They're not going to go out killing one another, robbing other people, robbing people homes and things like that. That
Okay, wait a minute. Now he's saying, uh, if a if a black if a if two parents that are black raises their kids are going to turn out decent. So it's not that black people are just straight evil. It's the lack of a mother and a father that causes black kids to turn out bad. I'm I don't understand. Is he flip-flopping or is he trying to change or what?
that's the
Right.
whole solution. It's not about the education at all, not one iota. It's about the
Sure,
lack
sure.
of character.
No, I agree, but let's say you're a black man of good character. Let's say you're black and slow, right? So, but you
Whoa, let's say you're a black man of good character. Let's say you're black and slow. So, in order to be a good black person, you have to be uneducated. That is crazy.
you do a blue collar job and you can make a decent living. Are you going to stay in the ghetto? No, you're going to leave, right? So that's what I'm saying.
I'm
Those
gonna only
strong
leave the
families, those
ghetto.
moral people,
I'm
they
gonna only.
leave these black
Hey,
neighborhoods and then
Alex,
they never get worse. Sorry.
Alex. I'm gonna only leave the neighborhood if I want to, or if the other people are not raising their children to be decent. Black children are not raised to be decent children because the parents are no good, and the ghetto is
Wait a minute. He just said that. Okay, so okay. He just said that if the parents raise their kids, the kids are going to turn out decent. But now he's saying kids in the ghetto are bad because the parents are bad. So it's pretty much back to black people are straight evil.
not the physical community. The ghetto is inside the person. The people are ghetto people.
Whoa. The ghetto is not a physical thing, but a mental thing. The the people are the ghetto. That's like let's say if that's like what the that's no different than, fucking what the Germans said about the Nazis. I mean the Germans said about the Jews. The Jews aren't the Jews are just straight, bad people. No matter what, they're just going to be evil. This is, in my opinion, why Jesse is pro white nationalism, because a lot of the talking points, pretty much everything he says, lines up with what a lot of the white nationalist people say, especially about black people, and it can be translated to various other groups of people.
And as a result, what you see on the outside is coming from the inside of them. The ghettos start within. And so no matter where they go, they're going to destroy. Black
No matter where they go, they're going to destroy because black people are inherently ghetto and evil. So what does this mean about Jesse himself since he's a black person? Is is he just pretending to put on this character, but behind doors he's an extremely evil person that's harming who knows what?
White people, if you gave them America, if white people just left right now, leave the
Right.
bank doors open, let them have all the money in the vaults, all the community, the suburb, and let the blacks have everything. In 1 year or less, entire country will be a ghetto because
Wow. Wow. So if all the white people in the United States left and black people had control, in less than a year, the entire United States would be a ghetto because black people are inherently evil people and cannot uh, manage a nation or lead groups of people or whatever. Wow. Yeah, this Jesse Lee Peterson is just truly a self-hating racist black person, and it's probably because the people he was raised around were extremely racist people who kept saying negative stuff about black people, and now he believes it.
I
they have no character.
I happen to agree with that, but I think one of the reasons is they wouldn't have a sense of ownership, and I think that's part of the problem. You need to
No,
think
that's
back to
not the
Frederick.
problem.
It is though, because
Oh,
what is
you're right.
America to a
You're
black
right
man?
in that ownership makes you more. It causes you to be more careful and concerned about what you own. You tend to want to take care of it. That's why I said that America needs to stop catering to the blacks. Let them suffer and die if they refuse to take care of themselves.
Wow, let them suffer and die if they refuse to take care of themselves. Wow, that's just extremely crazy, and I don't really know what to say to that.
Right, but how can we ever stop catering to unless we get away from this crazy idea of the blank slate, right? And then that combined with thinking that there should be equal outcomes, even though there are physical mental differences between whites and blacks. There's never going to be this instance where we stop catering to blacks, because there's always going to be unequal outcomes because blacks and whites are different. We've evolved differently over thousands of years.
What do you mean by
It's
that?
just I mean, in short, look, there's a reason that there hasn't been a white sprinter who's won the 100 meters in the Olympics in over 50 years. And there's a
Why
reason
is that? Why is that?
because it's obvious that blacks are physically superior to whites. Now, there's also
That's
a
not
reason
obvious.
why. Of course it is. It's
It's
demonstrably
only
true. There's
obvious
also a
in
reason that
your
almost-
mind, because if white people try and got out there and practice
They do.
and put
They
the
do. I ran
they
track
can
in high school.
run
Believe me, we all
faster
want to
than
be
a
pro
white
athletes.
person if they put the effort. But it's obvious if that's your mindset.
No, it's not about mindset. It's about science. It's about reality. And there's a reason why basically every Nobel laureate is almost exclusively white, and it's not racism. It's because whites, on average, not all, are more intelligent than blacks. I mean, this is
No, whites are not on average more intelligent than black people. Um, it also deals with the inequality of access to education. If black people had, better access to education, you would see a probably about the same amount of um, you know, intelligent black people out there, getting laureates and stuff. Uh, since we have uh, school funding based upon property taxes, and the fact that majority of the black population are forced to be renters due to Jim Crow era policies and various other policies preventing uh, black people from being able to uh, own land or own houses. Uh, the amount of funding towards schools where there's majority black neighborhoods, the funding is lacking, which causes black people to have a harder time getting the same education. If that were to change, it would be totally different. It is still based upon racism, even though these people don't want to see it. They're trying to use a bit of race realism. Uh, White people are, on average, smarter, so this is why white people have all this type of stuff, and black people are just, brute physical athletes that are dumb, so that's why they're better at, at athletics and stuff. When that is still, like, also based upon race. Let's take basketball, for example. Due to the fact that a lot of black people live in the inner cities, and there's mostly just, basketball courts and stuff to play at, a lot of black people uh, became good at basketball. Um, it's also like why there's a lot of white swimmers for the longest time. When uh, public school or public pools were segregated, black people weren't allowed to swim. It's where you get the stereotype that black people can't swim. It's just not uh, so much as a cultural thing for black people to do. There are black people that can swim, by the way. Um, uh, After desegregation happened with pools, they end up closing pools down. So it's just a lot of black people didn't learn to swim. Uh, More white people learned to swim, so you had a lot more white swimmers as that end up becoming, Olympic athletes.
Just science. It's not about hate. It's not about anything. It doesn't mean that blacks can't take care of themselves. It just means that the two groups are different and that we're best going our own way.
Well, I can't argue that because that's how the blacks act. It looked like they believe that white people are smarter than them when it comes to science and other things because all they're doing is trying to take without earning. And so they are acting as though white people are smarter than them. Do you believe that poverty causes crime?
I think to some degree, but not entirely, because if you look at like whites living in poverty, they don't commit anywhere near the amount of crime that blacks in poverty do.
I wonder where he gets that has gained that information from. But poverty does have an effect on crime. The lack of access to goods and services will prompt people to commit crimes in order to gain said good or service. When you correlate people of similar wealth, the same amount of crime is committed. People of higher wealth commit less crime than people of lower income. And it's just because lack of access to said good or service that they may need.
Alex,
Yeah.
I have breaking news for you.
What's that?
Poverty does not cause crime at all. Not
Yeah,
one
that's kind of what I was saying. I don't think it's a major factor. I don't
It's
think
not
it's
a
totally
factor,
insignificant.
Alex. Breaking news. It's not a factor at all.
Okay. I mean,
And
I'll
the
accept
proof
that.
is in the pudding. When I was growing up, I lived and everyone that I knew in my community, we lived in tin roof houses. We didn't put locks on the doors when we would go out at night or leave the home. We would just close the door. Bathrooms outside bathrooms. We, for the most part, we farmed and raised our own food. We didn't have a lot of money at all. and the people around me didn't have a lot of money. But there was no crime. There was no robbing and stealing and killing. There were no drug addicts. I knew
Yeah.
one
And I,
alcoholic, and that person was a functioning alcoholic. Um, and so
and
if
yet it was
poverty,
a little bit.
our yard was dirt. It wasn't grass. And if poverty causes crime at all, crime would have been out of control. But it wasn't true.
Right.
I don't know. I didn't grow up with anyone who went to jail, who robbed, steal, or killed. Everybody respected one another. They disagreed on some things, but they respected one another.
That still does not prove that poverty does not uh, influence crime or help causes crime. I
So
Right.
poverty doesn't
But
cause crime at all.
But Jesse, you're kind of making my point, though, right? Because you had a black community, you had a sense of ownership.
I did not
there,
have
right?
a black community. We were just living in America. We weren't thinking of ourselves as a black community.
Yeah, okay. You may not have explicitly thought of yourselves as a black community, but you were a black community, right? And what happened to the most moral people? What happened to the most intelligent people? Could they leave? No, they were forced to stay.
Stay where?
So they became the guiders of those communities.
Were forced to stay where?
In black neighborhoods due to segregation.
Nobody was forced to stay there. I don't remember anyone wanting to leave.
Nobody was forced to stay there, but I don't remember anybody wanting to leave because they weren't able to leave. Um, he may not remember much as a kid. I don't know, but yeah, during segregation, you weren't black people weren't really allowed to go to a lot of places unless they were like black areas because there was something called segregation going around. And if black people tried to go to a white area, they were killed.
Oh, okay, okay.
If you're living
during that
in
time,
an amazing,
you could have gone to white schools.
if you're living in an amazing environment, you're not gonna want to leave your environment.
Wow, okay, so he's calling a plantation an amazing environment. A a place where he was forced to be impoverished is amazing. That's crazy. He only finds it amazing though because there were, families and black people were being able to tell themselves what to do. It this guy is so twisted. It's just insane.
Unless you just
Okay.
want to move on, you know what I'm saying? But now you don't want to live in the black environment because it's so corrupt, it's so evil, it's so nasty.
Right, but Jesse, my question for you is then, why is it so nasty and so corrupt? What changed, right? Why
I
is
just
it that
told
it
you what
directly
changed.
coincides
What
with the civil
changed
rights
was
movement?
what changed was the civil rights movement started, which should have never happened. Black men stopped thinking for themselves and allow other men to make decisions for them, and women. They gave up their families. They started begging and blaming.
Well, this is crazy. Okay. The civil rights movement should have never happened. So we should still have Jim Crow laws. Should still have segregation. Um what black people should have never given up their families. I find it funny how he keeps claiming that it's black people's fault for the destruction of the black families when it's the white racist system that's the cause of the destruction. With slavery, you had slave owners breaking up black families. Jim Crow laws did similar, as prevented black families from gaining any kind of wealth. You had the war on drugs, which was mass incarceration of black males. Uh, well, both black people, heavily on the black males, and that was to forced, uh, you know, forced to have more black single mothers. Yet, Jesse, with his twisted ideas of everything, wants to solely blame black people because black people are evil, and it's not that we live in a racially biased society controlled, uh, for the most part, by racist people in power.
And stop being responsible.
And you don't think that has anything to do with integration? You don't think that has anything to do with them being forced to compete with whites in their schools, being forced to compete with whites in the labor force, and not being able to compete, and then leading to a sense of a disenfranchisement?
What happened? They turned from good to evil.
Yeah, but the question is why? What led to that?
I just told you what led to it.
Okay, say it again. Maybe I missed it. I'm white and slow.
When they decided to give their lives over to the phony civil rights leaders, when they decided that the fathers should leave the family and let the government take care of them, when they decided that, when the blacks decided that they were going to stop thinking for themselves and let Jesse Jackson and the NAACP and Louis Farrakhan and all those people think, and these phony black women like Maxine Waters, the Wicked Witch of the West, and when they decided they're going to let someone else think for them rather than thinking for themselves, as individuals should do, when they decided to give all that up, they went from good to evil.
It's just funny. Black people decided to stop thinking for themselves, so now they're evil people. No, that's not even anything that happened. Yet, and it's just funny. Jesse doesn't want black people to listen to black people. He wants black people to listen to white people, which is why he finds these black leaders to be evil, because it's not black people listening to white people anymore. Because Jesse Lee Peterson is totally fine with like slavery, especially white people enslaving people. So this is why he hates black people, because they don't listen to white people anymore.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I just think maybe you're not correct on the causes. I think again part of the reason why those civil rights leaders were so damaging is because they forced integration, is because they told blacks that they could compete with whites and that they needed to compete with whites instead of caring for their own, instead of
well, that's what I mean. That's what I mean about they let other people start to think for them, because no one, if you don't let someone force you to integrate or all that crap that they did, it wouldn't have happened. But the blacks allowed that to happen by believing the lies from the so-called civil rights leaders.
But Jesse, let me ask you this: like, when I look at it, I try to be empathetic, and I think about a black man's experience in America, right? And obviously, well, just hear me for a second, right? I get it.
You sound like them, a black man's experience in America. Well, that doesn't even make sense. That should not be a conversation, man.
I don't know why I force myself to listen to this kind of stuff. That shouldn't even be a conversation. He doesn't believe there is a black person has a different experience in America. It's just because he's totally crazy. Uh, this guy, I don't know what to say.
All right, my bad. Just give me a second, right? What does 1776 mean to a black man?
Nothing.
Nothing. How could it? They were still slaves. I get that. I
don't get that. That's not the reason it doesn't mean anything. The reason it doesn't mean anything was because blacks have been brainwashed. Before the brainwashing, it meant something to black people.
Yeah, because they were brainwashed into thinking that it meant something. Malware. Yeah, I used to thought that the Declaration of Independence meant something, and then I realized, yeah, these founding people who were claiming that everybody was created equal, still had slaves. Why are black people slaves if everybody is created equal? And then you come to find out they only believed white people were created equal, which is still why they had slaves. I mean, uh, George Washington, he had slaves at 11. Uh, as an adult, he could have released them when he became president or whatever, but didn't. Only released them when he died. Benjamin Franklin had various slaves, even raped several of them, and married one of them. Um, there were several others. I mean, pretty much all of them had slaves. This is why the Constitution means nothing to a lot of black people because it's a one big farce. You cannot claim everybody's created equal while enslaving people. You cannot rail against being bound in chains while binding people in chains.
But because
why?
of the
It wasn't
brainwash.
your country. You didn't build it. I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but like, you didn't build the country. It's not your constitution. They're not your founding fathers. You were slaves in 1776.
But they were
You know?
born in this
That's the
country, and they were
reality.
grateful
I'm
for
not
it.
trying to be a jerk.
They were born in this country, and so they loved the country. They didn't care about who built it, who did not build it.
Yeah, they didn't, they cared, which is why there was a lot of slave revolts, which isn't something that's talked about a whole lot in, like, U.S. history. But yeah, there is a lot of slave revolts that, happened because, people don't like being slaves. After a number of the slave revolts, there were several laws passed to restrict education to black people in order to prevent black people from being able to communicate with each other and creating more slave revolts. This happened harder after the Haitian revolt, when the Haitian slaves in Hades revolted along with some other groups of people. It's the largest successful slave revolt since the Roman Republic, with I forgot the person's name at the moment, but you should look it up.
And so they built too. They added on to it. They showed their appreciation.
They did. Sure. No. I mean, obviously, blacks did contribute to America. Blacks are part of the story of America, but at the same time, it's not their country, right?
Hey, Alice, if you're born here, it's your country.
Yeah, the United States is as much the country of white people as it is black people. Yes, black people have contributed a lot to the United States, especially in the early days where slaves were doing a lot of the farming and well, slave work and stuff. They helped build a whole lot. Like even the White House, several of the White Houses, as it was burned and rebuilt, were built by slaves.
Well, unfortunately, right, because we have the anchor baby stuff. But that's a whole other discussion.
Alice, what's wrong with you?
I'm all right. Why do you ask?
You think like them. If you're born in America, it's your country.
No, you're right. I don't think like these crazy black lesbians or any of these other weirdos, but I do think like Malcolm X, like Marcus Garvey. I admire those men. I mean,
Did you build America?
Me personally,
yes.
No.
And do you believe that it's your country?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Why do you feel that way? You didn't build it.
Because America is the evolution, the growth of Europe, right? It's the story of Europe. I mean, even our laws, they go back to the
But
Magna
you didn't
Carta,
build it,
right?
though. You had nothing to do with it.
No, I didn't. But my
likewise, for any black person that's born in America, before the Civil Rights Movement, they were grateful that they were born in the greatest country in the world, and
Well, that's a
it's
separate
their
thing.
they were born in their country.
Wow, before the civil rights era, black people were grateful for being born in this country while being oppressed and killed by the system that they live in, being forced to be unable to work or arrested for no reason, being lynched by the cops and citizens around them uh, for false accusations. They were grateful for the Tulsa race massacre, where Black Wall Street was burned down with the help of the state and the military. Uh, yeah, Black Wall Street, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Oklahoma, burned down by the state with the due to false accusation by a racist Karen. That's something you should look up. And that's not something talked about a whole lot in history. Uh,
And they don't. Normal black people don't think that Africa is their country. That's dumb thinking. That's brainwashing. If they move to Africa right now, they're not going to feel at home.
Well,
yes, no one's gonna feel at home going to a place they weren't born in and lived in for years and years. It'd be different if you're like born in one nation and move when you're in your early childhood or something. You would feel at home in the other nation because you grew up there and spent more time there. That is correct.
I agree with that, and I think Africa is kind of its own issue. I think you're right. I think that blacks have their own experience, generally speaking, in America.
The only bad experience that black people have in America is that they're fallen away from God, they're immoral, and they can't think straight.
Wow. Wow, the only bad experience black people have in America is not being religious enough and not thinking for themselves. He is so twisted.
And all their bad experiences are coming from them. It's not coming from white people.
All right, but Jesse, you're obviously a Christian. Jesse, you're a Christian.
I wonder if what he feels. I mean, is slavery because black people weren't Christian enough? Or, and just the fault of black people? Or what?
I'm a Christian. Let me ask you this. Like, does it not seem kind of abnormal that you have these separate races that God created that we're now expected to mix after spending thousands of years separated from one another?
When you say mix, what do you mean?
Wow, this guy wants to go to the Tower of Babel BS. I wonder if he also wants to use the curse of Ham justification as well. Tower of Babel, I assume everybody knows. People tried to build a tower to God. God got pissed because if they were unified, they could do whatever. So he created a bunch of different language. The curse of Ham was after Noah's son Ham saw Noah naked after Noah decided to get drunk and cursed Ham to be black and to be the slaves of Noah's son. That is another justification used back during the slave days as to why it was okay to enslave black people because of the curse of Ham.
Well, live next to one another, intermarry.
It wouldn't be abnormal if it happened naturally, but if it's happening to prove something is forced together or because you're in a fallen state, then that's not normal. It's abnormal. But Alice, I got.
Wow, so he's saying all the biracial people in the United States nowadays are unnatural people. Wow, that's crazy. That is totally far out there. This is Jesse Lee Peterson is an extreme far right person. Um, he's black, but he is a white nationalist. Everything he supports is in support of white nationalism. He may not, uh, uh, what, agree to that claim, but it is, it is what it is. You just gotta listen to his videos, listen to him talk. It's all about, everything about white nationalism.
Got to run, man. Very interesting
All right.
conversation, though.
Thanks, Jesse.